So, to start my talk, the disclaimer I have is that definitely not a guru. As Dr. Sujit was mentioning, I just finished my list and came back home 10-15 minutes ago. And what I'm sharing here is some life hacks and learnings that I have gathered in my journey and by reading or meeting people. And the main books that influenced me to do this talk was this book by Marshall Goldsmith. Now, Marshall Goldsmith happens to be a coach for CEOs, and this book actually is probably what we call as a quake book in my life, wherein I realized that there are so many things that we should be knowing which we hadn't learned. The other book which made an impact to creating this talk was this book by Mo Godot. Mo Godot happens to be ex-chief business officer of Google X, who lost his son, who was aged 21 years, following which he has got on to this mission of creating at least a few billion happy souls on this earth. The third, which I'm sure many people would know, quite a popular book, is The Atomic Habits. And this again is a book which had influenced me by Scott Adams called How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. I think that is very important in present day life when we actually take even the smallest failure as a big failure. And I wrote to, I think, Marshall Goldsmith a few years ago. He said he would be very happy for me to go ahead and do this talk, and he's in touch with me. We're trying to hopefully get him on the Lumini Lounge podcast soon. So the outline of my talk would be to talk about what is regret, what is fulfillment, which is the basic foundation of what you can call as earned life. Then what is an earned life, right? We all know what earning is, but what is an earned life? Then we'll talk a little bit about the checklist for success, and there is something called as a AAA model. And finally, a very important aspect of this entire talk is something called as a life plan review. So coming to what is fulfillment and regret, right? These are a very important words that we need to understand. Before we understand those two, we'll just go into what actually life is and what are the parameters through which we can gauge this fulfillment and regret. So to start with, purpose, right? All of us say that we need to have a purpose in life, a purpose for every day, that when we go to work or when we live our life. The second is, what is meaning? This is extremely important because at the end of the day, if you ask yourself, did I do something which gives my life meaning? It will be a very hard question to answer. The third, of course, we all know our achievements. We pass our exams, we get awards, we get our paycheck at the end of the month. So this is something which is very measurable and tangible. Then, of course, another thing which gives either this fulfillment or regret is friends and family and our network. And a little bit about ourselves, right? We always have this self chat with ourselves, the monologue that goes inside. That again should be something which is fulfilling. And finally, happiness. Now, this is something that is spoken about so much, but the main thing here is happiness doesn't have a meter. It says, yes, this is happiness, and everybody should be happy with this scale. And more importantly, as you can see, this little kid trying to grab water, happiness is something like that. The more we try to grab it, the more it eludes us. So let's think about what regret is. And if you always say, I'll be happy when I get something, I think that's a wrong statement because happiness is in the present moment. So when we talk about regret, this is a famous TED talk that I would point you to by Catherine Schultz. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner and she writes really well. If you would like to read her books, again, wonderful articles as well. And what she said regret was that it's an emotion when we think that our present could be better if we had done something different in the past. Now, this is when I would like to ask people to get onto their chat box and just write one thing. It could be something that you didn't take, like example, it could be a course that you didn't do, it could be a job that you didn't take, or it could be something that you were scared at that point to do, something that if you had done in the past, you would have been better in the present. I just request all of you to just write one word, what it could be. I have my phone on the chat box here, so I'll just go through it. If I don't know whether all of you are driving because I don't see anything coming up in the chat box here. But anyway, we'll keep that in the loop. Okay, something's going for, somebody said going for psychiatry, job. I think we are getting a few answers here. We'll look into that. So how little oneself has done compared to the inner potential, the true self, is what is regret. So we all know that we have an inner potential, and probably later in life, we realize that inner potential to some extent. And probably we think that, yes, we had an inner potential which was much greater. So I can see a few answers coming. Wanted to become an IAS, second MBBS, somebody relaxed, didn't complete DNB in anesthesia, post DA. Then somebody, Dr. Sandeep says family time, right? Now, this is what the data shows. 2005, this was a psychology journal. And if you look at that and look at the answers that have come in chat box, we can see that there is a commonality here that education features top on the list. 32% proportion of regrets were related to education. So when we tell our kids, don't neglect education, sit and study, do well, it is because we regret not having done well at some point in the past. The second is career. Third is romance. Probably you didn't reach out to that person whom you liked. You didn't have the courage to go and talk to that person. So these are things that people regret. So in short, we can say that when there is inaction due to fear, it generally leads to regret. And when there is action, it generally leads to fulfillment. This is just a broad outline, right? So now what are we going to do when it comes to having a life of fulfillment? We have to aim for a life of fulfillment, and this comes with earning. We have to earn this fulfillment. So I hope I'm clear right now, right? We have to live a life where we feel that it's a life of regret, and we have to earn it. So what is earning? So let's take the example of this SUV here, a wonderful SUV, an AMG class Mercedes SUV. So we feel that, yes, I want this. So what do? We work hard for it. And then one day we get that and we go, of course, off-roading and then put the pictures on Instagram, Facebook, So we know what earning is, right? Now, what is an earned life? Earned life is when our choices, risks, and effort we make in each moment. This is the main important thing here. It is each moment. It should align with an overarching purpose in our lives, regardless of the eventual outcome. So we are looking at very similar to what Krishna probably told in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, saying that, yes, your choices, risks, efforts, what you're doing right now in each moment should align with your overarching purpose, regardless of the eventual outcome. And to give you an example of a person who's lived such a life, I couldn't probably pick a better person than Mahatma Gandhi. Because if you see what he did throughout his life, he had an overarching purpose. He was not worried about the eventual outcome, but he lived every moment. Every moment, the choices, the risks he took, and the potential that he had, he, I think, realized it to the full. And when we talk about lives like that, and you say, oh, people might have been lucky, you cannot say that because luck is something that you cannot mention in the presence of self-made men because they have not used luck. They have been living an earned life. And when we talk about what is luck in another way, we can just take an example of an exam. A merited success is when it feels inevitable because you have read through, you have finished all the chapters, you have revised, and there is definitely no guilt because it's an achievement because you have worked hard for it and it is triumphant. But let's take an unmerited success. I have not prepared for the exam. I have just read probably 4 chapters, but because of my good luck, I get all the questions from those 4 chapters because the person who set the paper didn't even see the other chapters. Deep down, I am guilty of being lucky, and there is a sigh of relief. Now, if you look at these 2 lines, we would like to be in the left-hand thing, which is the merited success. So when we take success, let's define what success is and what do we need to do for success. Now, just like how we have a checklist for success, the main thing here in life to note is when we move from one grade to another. So we finish our 10th grade. We were really doing well in our class, so we went to a good college. But the cohort of students coming into that college, again, were very good. I struggled really hard, and then I reached probably, say, IIT or a good medical school like AIMS. Now, when I reached there, again, I'm in a cohort of people who have done really well. I struggle hard and again do well. So there is something that is defining success here, right? But when we reach a big game called life, there's nothing like an immediate success parameter. So we end up kind of taking the surrogate parameters of wealth, of money, of having either real estate or cars or something on those lines. So I think it's very important for us to define what success is. And if you take a checklist for what can lead to success, we can start with something as motivation. This is the first thing that would probably come in the checklist, and this is the why. So the difference between desire and motivation is that motivation is a heightened motivational state. You want to do something, and you want to do something which is specific, and it's a task towards a goal. So this is extremely important. So the motivation to do something is very important when we think about the success checklist. And it involves a strategy. So, example, I want to run the marathon in another 2 months or 3 months. I have a strategy. So I'm motivated to run the marathon. I have a strategy. The next thing is I need to have the ability. So the ability is you have the motivation. Now you need to have the ability, which is a level of skill. So if I don't know how to run, or if I don't like running, or if I can't run, I might not be able to run the marathon because I don't have the ability. So ability is a portfolio of skills and personality traits, right? It is not just as an anesthetist being able to do a spinal epidural or put a tube in a malempathy grade 4 patient. It is a portfolio of skills. It includes the hard skills, as they call it, and the soft skills. And one of the important things here, especially for the youngsters, that I would like to reiterate is trying, behaving well, and showing up matter a lot. What I mean by this is, yes, you might not be good at it, but you need to try to get better. You need to behave well when you don't succeed, because even taking failure is an art. And showing up on a regular basis to do that is more important than anything. So here we need to know that multiple goods definitely is better than excellent, because you will reach there. The third thing here in this success checklist is understanding what this entire thing is about. So we went through the why, we went through the ability. Now we are going to look at what to do and how to do. So here you need to know your role. So let's take anesthesia training itself. Now we know that a first year resident is different from a third year resident, from an SR to probably a professor. So know your role and do not deviate, right? In your life, whatever your role is, this is what even our Shastras talk about. So when you have the role of a son, you behave like a son. When you have a role of a father, you behave like a father. So don't deviate from that. And in this, three things are extremely important. And I would like to reiterate that there is so much of talk happening about these three things now in the AI, I would say, transformation that we are seeing, or the evolution that we are going through. Listening, kindness, and gratitude. These three cannot be replaced by AI. AI can listen to you, but it can't listen to you like a human. So learn the art of listening. Second is kindness. Kindness is something that has to be very human. It cannot be AI related. So if you are going to be successful, I think listening, kindness, and the most important is gratitude. As we are going to be flooded with a lot of materialistic pleasures going in the future, because AI and robotics will be able to generate quite a lot, we will have most of the things that will give us external happiness. But knowing that these things are something that we should be grateful for is more important, and that will lead to happiness later in life. So success also has a very key integral part in having these three traits, that is listening, kindness, and gratitude embedded into it. The next thing which comes in our list, of course, is I was just giving an example of training where you gain confidence by doing various things like repetitions, like example I've given here is epidurals. The other important thing in success is if you look at any successful person, let's take Ambani's, for example, right? Mukesh Ambani. He needs to have a support system at workplace, at home, as friends or as circles in network, and of course in the society. And this is extremely important for success. If you look at surgeons, they have a team, right? All of you working with very successful surgeons know that they will have the same scrub nurse, they will have the same assistant coming in, preparing everything. Similarly, if you look at athletes, Andy Murray probably had a support team of 12 people, right? When he was in the peak of his career. So building a support system, ideally of around 5 to 6 people, is very important. Now, in this role, you can create something called as a board of directors. Now, let's take example. You have mentors or you have teachers who have guided you in your life. They can be your board of directors. They are your support system to go to when you need decision-making skills. So you can ask them a difficult question. You are in some trouble. or you're in a dilemma whether to choose or not, you can actually ask them. So support systems are very important. And we have to realize all of us need help, right? So ensure that you build your support systems. But the final thing in this success checklist is you might have everything that you need, but if there is no marketplace for your skills, that is, the society is not going to value what you have, you're not going to be successful. So keep a watch on what is actually the trending thing or what might be in vogue later and work towards it. Now, this might not be that important when it comes to anesthetist or a doctor's perspective because our careers have a different trajectory compared to other careers. But presently, the world is in a lot of flux as to what is right and what is wrong when it comes to jobs. And just today, I read an article from the New York Times, which was talking about how there are going to be at least 20 to 30 different job profiles or different jobs created just because of artificial intelligence taking over many jobs. So the question now comes is, yes, we know what is success and we know what we need to do to be successful, but what is stopping all of us for changing for the better? The first thing is law of inertia, right? Now we know that whenever we are doing something, we are happy doing that and we are happy continuing to do that, right? So without any inner effort, we'll tend to go in the same direction that we were going, right? This is the first thing. So the main thing here is to think and analyze as to what we can change. This is the first one. Second is lack of imagination. Now, many of you who wrote what you regret, right, probably had this lack of imagination because we couldn't project as to what we could end up as, right? So a simple example is we can always say A plus B equals E. That's a formula that we know. And we say, fine, you do medicine, you do anesthesia, and then you'll end up as a consultant somewhere working and earning this amount of money. But it's very difficult for us to say, yes, AJ plus L. That is, yes, I become an anesthetist, but what if I start a company which manufactures, say, connectors for IV line? And I do parallelly run my business and I also do my practice. Now, this is something that we cannot imagine. So this is again something which impedes us from becoming successful. The third important thing is adaptability, right? The pace of change you're experiencing today is the slowest pace of change you'll experience for the rest of your life. Now, what do we mean by that? If you take your life, say 5 or 10 years ago, you would definitely say I had more time for my friends. I had more time for probably spending time at home, listening to music or whatever. But now I've become more busy, right? I've got more things to look at or responsibilities and things like that. So remember that the life will become fast and adaptability is one of the very key things, and anticipating this change is extremely important. The other thing which is a big problem nowadays when it comes to being successful is heightened distraction. Now here I would like to take a small break and ask in the chat box, do people listening to this talk know how many hours are they using the phone every day? Yes or no? That's all. Are you aware of the number of hours you're using your phone? That's my question. Dr. Sujit says yes, Dr. Okay. So many of them are saying yes, and Dr. Sandeep, in fact, has put down 1.5, somebody 6 hours. Yes, yes, yes. So everybody says yes, right? So everybody is keeping a tab on what's happening. You will be shocked to know that many people don't keep a tab. The amount of time that they spend on this here, that's Instagram, this, which is YouTube, and of course, WhatsApp, right, is enormous. So on an average, whenever I quiz people in the OT or my juniors, we see that invariably people are using 3 to 4 hours. That's an average. I have had some of my patients who come definitely with neck pain when they're using more, using up to 8 to 9 hours of phone. So this is something that is definitely impeding our success. And wonderful book on this is by Cal Newport, right? He has written a lot of books and his talks are also very impressive. So you can go and listen to them. So he writes about how we need to do more of deep work and avoid all these distractions. The other important thing that keeps us thinking about success or becoming successful is something called the runway. This is a talk that I did quite a while ago, so I'm sorry if I'm bringing in some emotions here, looking at the flight taking off in the runway here. But runway is the time we allot ourselves to do something. So when we start our careers, we overestimate the runway. That is, we think we have a lot of time and we will keep postponing things, right? Oh, I'll do this later. I'll write my book later. I will give this talk, I'll do this research project later, or, things like this. But as we grow old, we start to underestimate the runway. That is, we start thinking we don't have enough life left, right? So this is something paradox or an illusion that we think we have a lot of life initially, and as we grow old, we think we have less. So we have to balance this and understand that yes, we have a definitive runway, and we have to make the best use of it. The other thing which can impede success is the hurdle of choice. Again, I would like to kind of bring this book into the highlight here, which is by Barry Schwartz, which is called The Paradox of Choice. Now, why is choice a hurdle? Now, choice expends brain energy. And recently I was reading something about glutamate being the neurotransmitter, which actually, just like dopamine is there for all the Facebook likes and Instagram likes, hurdle of choice, the more amount of choice you're exposed to, the more decision making that you have to do, it expends more brain energy. So how do we go about this? We avoid choice for smaller choices. So like example, what to eat, what to wear, simple things, what route to take to office or hospital. These things you do something called as a choice avoidance. That is, you make it a habit. But you have to go in all out on things that matter the most. So when it comes to changing a hospital, right? A new hospital has come up in town and they have come and approached you to kind of move there. These are the times when you have to spend all your brain energy to think of all the possibilities. So delegate, automate, or eliminate the rest. So go in all out on things that matter and delegate, automate, or eliminate the rest. So this will free up your brain to actually make better choices. And the best example is this gentleman here. You can see that his attire did not change for close to whatever 10, 11 years of these photos that I've taken here as examples. And he kept this as a constant because he didn't want to expend any energy on what he wears every day to work. So now this is something that I would like you to do as an exercise at home. Make a list of the choices that you make on a daily basis. Try to automate decision making on the less important ones. Think about it, right? And after a month, you can review it and see whether you have more mental energy left at the end of the day. It's a very simple experiment. You can do this at home. So now let's move on to, after finishing what is a checklist for success, what are the impediments for success, into what actually is important. That is the reality, right? Now, the reality here is that you should realize when you're talking about an earned life, every breath you take is the new you, right? What you achieved yesterday, what you achieved a year ago, what you achieved 10 years ago is not the you. The present you is definitely different from the past you, and all your prized possessions, accolades need to be real. So as anesthetists, we know that every case tests you, and whatever you might have done in the past, that case when you're doing is the most important thing in your life. So similarly in life, it's extremely important not to sit on the past accolades or possessions or rewards, but to earn it every day. So again, an experiment for all of you is you need to write 2 letters, one to the past you. So let's take, for example, you're writing a letter to yourself 10 or 15 years ago. Express gratitude for something that you earned in that process through this person. Like example, if I take Murali 15 years ago, what did I do different for which I'm grateful today, which has made a difference in my life? And another letter to the future you as to what investment are you doing for this person, whether it's in education, whether you're sacrificing something, or whether it's in relationship, or whether it's in finance. Write a letter and write this letter to the past you. And I guarantee that it will be quite revealing. So now coming to what I described initially in the outline as the AAA model, right? Now the AAA model is nothing but action, ambition, and aspiration. Now action, we all know, reflects a conscious choice. For example, I picked up my phone here. I know I've done an action and it is because I wanted to align it properly. That again can be active or passive. But for most of us, generally it's an aimless activity, right? Because we always want to be seen as busy. So we are just moving from here to there, doing something, and action is always in the immediate time frame. So I'm picking up something, I'm doing something, and this is action in an immediate time frame without much of a choice most of the times, right? Ambition is what we want to achieve. So this is what you would, if you're in the finance side, when you're investing in shares or in the stock market, you'll see that, they come out with quarterly targets and they come out with quarterly results. So this is what want to achieve, right? So here we are looking at a measurable pursuit of a goal, which is time bound, wherein X is turning into Y. Okay. And the delight you feel is fleeting because you get something and then it vanishes. So it is not as high as you expected, and it does not lead to happiness and a fulfilled life. Okay. So this is an example of ambition where you're looking at, this is a dragon, there's a Chinese dragon, right? Which is eating but never full, always eating but never full. Now, this is ambition. The third thing in this AAA is aspiration, right? As to who we want to become. Now, this is a pursuit of a greater objective. An example is to be a better parent. There is no target of what a better parent is, right? So you want to be a better parent. That is aspiration. And there is no marked finish line here because it defies measurement, right? You can be a better parent every day. You can increase the amount of love. You can actually be a better parent. So the X person is evolving into a Y person here, right? And this invariably is regret proof. That is, you are brave enough to give it the best try. It didn't happen, but you wanted to be a better parent, right? And it's worthy of developing and protecting. So why is this important? Is if you take an example of somebody going on a road trip, the action is driving. So he starts from, say, Kochi and he wants to go all around here. The ambition is each stop. So he would like to go to Bangalore first and then go to Chennai, then go to Hyderabad. So he's got an ambition. But what is his aspiration? His aspiration is to see India. So if you have an aspiration which gets aligned, like this person, action is drive my new SUV, cover the routes and travel and learn. So if you align all these three, that is your action, aligned with ambition, aligned with aspiration, and commit fully to what matters most to you, you will definitely be a happy person, a fulfilled person. So what do we do as an experiment here is you would probably take an action which is immediate, like what you do, what you want to achieve, and what you want to become. So I'm not going to kind of go through the chat box here, but this is something you can take as a screenshot and then probably think about what action would you do tomorrow, which will probably lead to a ambition or ambitious goal in the near future, which would lead you to become something in the future self. So this is something that I want you to do at home. Now, as we discussed with success, what prevents success happening for these three things, that is action, ambition, and aspiration, there are a few impediments. But before that, we would like to see if you were to build a house with these three as the main ingredients, there are two things which are extremely important. One is discipline and one is willpower. Now, one of the best definitions for discipline and willpower is this, that discipline is the power to say yes to hard stuff, whereas willpower is the power to say no to wrong stuff. Now, I found this very powerful because if you were to get up in the morning and want to go for a walk, it is the power to say yes to this hard stuff. And the evening, when the willpower is actually the lowest, it's around this time, and somebody calls you for a drink, the power to say no to that wrong stuff is more important. So discipline, I would probably rate it as a morning thing and willpower as a evening thing because we are low on willpower in the evenings. And very important is compliance, right? If you want to do something, if your action, ambition, and aspiration goals have to kind of match up and then come out with a successful result, you need to be having compliance. And all of us know what compliance is. We work in hospitals where we have our NABH or JCA standards or some standards where we have to be compliant. Now, as you see in the hospital, it's the same thing in life. It's very easy to understand. Do the surgical safety checklist. Very easy to understand, but very hard to do. So remember that compliance is easy to understand, hard to do. And therein comes another very important aspect called accountability. So if you have a partner, most of the times it can be a spouse or it could be a good friend, you can be more compliant, right? So this is something, again, which is very important to have an accountability partner. It needn't be somebody living with you. It can be somebody who's far away, but you still catch up and find out whether you're doing the right thing. And importantly, if you want to be accountable to yourself, forget being accountable to anybody. A simple thing is to have a to-do list. And when you do a to-do list, you do it the night before you sleep, because then you can sleep with less anxiety because you know what you're going to do tomorrow. What are the main things? And then you tick them off. And one of the very easy ways to do this is use Google Tasks. And I think iPhone also has got similar stuff. So you can actually put them there and you can start doing this. And it's quite a, I would say, rewarding thing at the end of the day, looking at this list because you have completed so many important things. So you're accountable for yourself. And more importantly, if you have a calendar, you can write up something like this and be accountable to yourself and make sure that you're doing those things on a regular basis. And have something which is measurable, right? When I say measurable, you can have specific targets if you have an ambition. So the best example would be, say, fitness. So you know what you've got to do. You've got to lose this much weight. So you can actually go on your diet and do that. Now, all this combined into one very interesting, I would say, exercise is called the life plan review. Now, this is something that I experimented in my own life. So I had 10 people close to me from different walks of life, few doctors, my family, close friends. And we did this for around 4 months last year. And it worked really wonders. And what is life plan review is something that originated from this gentleman in the screen, who was the CEO of Ford General Motors. And what he did was he turned the entire business around, which was failing, by something called as a business plan review. And the business plan review or life plan review relies on one important thing, that no earning can happen without heroic effort. So you need to put in your effort. So that is the first underlying statement of this life plan review. Second important thing is you pay attention to the level of trying, not the results, right? So you're going to be putting your best effort. That is the best effort of trying. So to take example, reading, I like to read 10 pages a day might be my target. One of the targets, I'll explain what this is. Did you try your best to read 10 pages is more important, and you're going to score on that, than reading those 10 pages. If you read the 10 pages, well and good, but did you do your best to read the 10 pages? Third is you have this small group, ideally of around 8 to 10 people, and you share your results with your group. And there is no excuse for not trying. This is the main thing here. You have to try and you have to share that score rating with the group. So to give you an example of what we had as the markers initially was 6 things that you score yourself every day. So you can do this with your friends. I have an Excel sheet which I'm happy to share with Dr. Sujit, who can share it with everyone. So you can just put your 6 things what you would like to do, and I'm just giving you some examples. One is you can say, did I do my best to set clear goals? So the clear goals could be simple thing like creating a presentation for the upcoming talk, or it could be booking my flight tickets for a holiday. Did you make progress towards achieving these goals? Right? That's another thing which you can rate on. Third, did you find meaning? Now, this is very difficult. Initially, when you start doing it, you'll realize, did you find meaning at the end of the day? Did you do your best to be happy? Right? Did you do your best to maintain and build positive relationships? And did you do your best to be fully engaged? That is mindfulness. So you can have your own goals. It can be drinking water. It could be looking after your pet. It could be, walking 10,000 steps. It could be whatever, but it could be these measurable goals. Then you rate them, right? Based on whether you did your best effort or it was terrible. So if you take, say, example, be happy, right? We had this as one of our PPR sheets. And you can see this gentleman is a good friend of mine, had, work on community activities, work towards assessment of patent infringement. He had a couple of patents for which he was working on. He was working on a music album with A.R. Rahman, and he was spending time with family, which again he was scoring. So here, the main thing to realize is when you talk about happiness as one of the things you're scoring, it's very simple. It's an equation. Okay. If your perception of events in your life, okay, and the expectations of life, how life should be, right? If you subtract each one of them, if your expectations were nothing, let's take expectations was 1 and the events that happened around you were 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. So now there's a happiness quotient of around 4, right? But if your expectations were 5 and what happened was 1, it is minus 4. So happiness in another way in this equation is talking about how you should actually lower your expectation and accept what comes in your way, right? So focusing on the present moment is extremely important when it comes to happiness. And this is a book I would strongly recommend, one of the best books on happiness. So what do you do with this course? So you self-monitor every night. You review your purpose regularly, change the questions after 3-4 weeks if you want to. And the main thing here is you're increasing the effort to reach the goal. So you're slowly increasing the effort, you're trying your best. So if it could be push-ups, you're increasing the push-ups as it goes weekly. And you have the group that reviews each other's efforts. You meet up once in a week on Zoom or something and say, fine, okay, these are my scores, 5 minutes each, and done. And LPR can be done in other avatars, like you can do it in your hospital, you can have a business plan review, you can do it with family, and also you can do something like an environment plan review. You can have your community or apartment people doing a similar thing as to how you're going to keep it clean, how you're going to make it better. So it can be applied to any goal along the road, right? And one of the very important things I talk about when I talk about this is how cell in your body is doing its best. Every cell in your body is doing its best. So if as a citizen of this country, as a member of a team, if you're working in a big team such as the ozone team, you are doing your best. Like how each cell is doing its best, I'm sure everything will bloom, everything will get better, and it'll be wonderful and it'll be a good honor. So make earning a habit, right? Earn your beginnings. It could be the first job, the marriage. You disengage from your past, from your achievements or your identity that I was so great, I did this, I did that. And as they say in cricket, play the shot in front of you. Okay, don't think about the six that you hit because you can get out the next ball. Play the shot in front of you. So we again come back to the same thing, right? Purpose, what gives life meaning, achieving, net worth, thinking about ourselves and happiness. Now we covered most of the things that actually lead us to probably achieving these six things in a better way. But one of the main things in our life is to make a positive difference and not prove that we are right. This is probably very important. And he is one of the big management gurus, Peter Drucker, who said this. And this actually is very important, and it relies on two important things of how you can make this positive difference. One is credibility, and the second is empathy. Now, credibility is when you're consistently competent, you develop credibility, you are credible over time, then you become an influencer. I'm not talking about influencer in an Instagram way. You become an influencer for people around you. And when you become an influencer, you can make a positive difference. So this is, again, I would like you to take a screenshot if you want to. If you see this credibility matrix, on the x-axis, you have whether you're making a positive difference or not, the positive on this side and negative on this side. Proving yourself, that is proving to the world, right? You're going out and talking to people, you're marketing yourself on this axis. And if you see on the left bottom, you're not making a positive difference, and therefore you don't need to prove yourself. So let go of it. So it could be a small squabble on the road. Somebody has crossed you. Nothing has happened, no major accident, but you end up getting into a small tiff. You're not making a positive difference. Let go of that, right? Discussing about politics, discussing about religion, not what, right? Here, you're not making a positive difference, but you're trying to prove yourself. You're overselling yourself. So identify what are the areas in your life where you're overselling yourself. Here, you're making a positive difference, but you're not selling yourself much, right? So you're underselling yourself. So most of us end up in this because we are shy. We think ourselves as introverts. We don't like to talk. So we undersell ourselves when we can actually make a positive difference. And the main area where we all need to land is in this box, where we need to be making a positive difference, and we need to be going and telling the world that we are making a positive difference. Now, this is where you earn credibility, okay? And the last thing which I would like to touch upon is empathy, which again, as I mentioned earlier, in the world of AI, which is going to be what we are going to be in another 5 or 6 years, or earlier than that, we need to ensure that we have good amount of cognitive empathy, that is a desire to understand another person, emotional empathy, a desire to feel what others are going through, and a compassionate empathy, which is a desire to help and support. So we see examples of this coming through social media, right? In all our groups, somebody helped somebody, there's compassionate empathy, somebody was doing something for others. So we see a lot of examples being quoted, but the question is, are we displaying and experiencing empathy when it matters the most to create a positive impact? So this is one of the most important questions that we need to ask when it comes to empathy. And as Deepak Chopra has mentioned, the true self, when you realize your true self, it is certain and clear about things. There is no confusion. It is stable. You don't have, unstable. You don't go through instability. It is driven by a deep sense of truth. It is at peace, and true self is love. Now, this might sound, is Swamiji talking, but this is something that has been proven, and there is a lot of evidence to talk about how this works. So, how do you reach your true self? As I mentioned, your checklist for success, you understand the AAA model, you do the life plan review, you ensure that you end up with some good credibility and show empathy to people around and make a positive change. So I would like to end this talk by saying that how you spend your moments is ultimately how you spend your life. So earn every moment and definitely you live an earned life. Thank you.